It began with a question that sounded almost too simple to matter. A man sat in front of a screen late at night, reading a response generated by an artificial intelligence system. The answer was precise, structured, and uncannily relevant. It solved his problem in seconds, something that had taken him hours to figure out before. But instead of feeling impressed, he paused. Something about it felt different. Not wrong, not inaccurate, just unfamiliar in a way that was difficult to explain. He leaned back, stared at the glowing text, and asked himself a question that would quietly echo across millions of minds in the years to come. Is this intelligence, or just a very advanced library? For most people, the instinctive answer is simple. A library stores information. A machine retrieves it. End of story. That belief feels comfortable because it preserves a boundary, one that keeps intelligence firmly within human territory. But comfort and accuracy are not always aligned. Because the moment you begin to examine how modern AI systems actually function, the distinction between retrieval and reasoning begins to blur in ways that are far more complex than most people realize. At first glance, the argument seems logical. AI is trained on data created by humans. It learns patterns from existing information. It produces outputs based on what it has seen. In that sense, it appears to be nothing more than an advanced form of retrieval, a system that reorganizes knowledge rather than creating it. But this interpretation misses something critical. It assumes that intelligence is defined solely by the origin of knowledge, rather than the process applied to it. Consider a simple example. Imagine two individuals with access to the same library. One reads the material and repeats it exactly as written. The other reads the same material but begins to connect ideas, identify patterns, and generate new conclusions that were never explicitly stated. Both are using the same source. But only one is demonstrating something beyond retrieval. This difference, subtle yet profound, is where the conversation about AI begins to change. Because modern AI systems are not designed to store information in a traditional sense. They do not function like databases that pull exact answers from predefined entries. Instead, they operate through a process that involves transforming input into representations, analyzing relationships within those representations, and generating outputs based on probabilities shaped by learned patterns. This process does not rely on retrieving a single stored answer. It constructs an answer in real time. And that distinction matters. Because construction introduces variability. It introduces the possibility of generating responses that have never existed before in exactly the same form. It introduces something that begins to resemble reasoning, not in the human sense, but in a way that challenges the simplicity of the smart library analogy. There was a case involving a software developer who encountered this difference in an unexpected way. He was working on a complex problem involving system optimization, something that required balancing multiple variables across different constraints. After hours of unsuccessful attempts, he turned to an AI system for assistance. The response he received did not simply restate known solutions. It proposed an approach that combined elements from different methodologies in a way he had not considered. At first, he assumed it was referencing a known technique. But after searching extensively, he could not find any documentation of the exact method described. The components existed. The combination did not. This is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Because if a system can generate a novel combination of ideas based on learned patterns, is that still retrieval? Or is it something else? To answer that, it becomes necessary to look deeper into how intelligence itself is defined. For centuries, intelligence has been associated with the ability to learn, adapt, and solve problems. It has been tied to understanding, creativity, and the capacity to navigate uncertainty. But these definitions were formed in a context where intelligence was exclusively biological. They were never designed to account for systems that operate without consciousness, without experience, and without subjective awareness. This creates a gap, a conceptual space where traditional definitions begin to lose clarity. Because AI does not understand in the way humans do. It does not possess awareness. It does not experience meaning. But it can perform tasks that require pattern recognition, abstraction, and decision-making at a level that begins to overlap with what humans describe as intelligent behavior. And this overlap is where the tension lies. There was another instance involving a medical researcher analyzing complex datasets related to disease progression. The patterns within the data were subtle, too subtle for conventional analysis to detect easily. When an AI system was applied to the problem, it identified correlations that had not been previously observed. These correlations led to new hypotheses, which were later validated through further research. The AI did not understand the disease. It did not possess insight in the human sense. But it contributed to a discovery process that expanded human knowledge. So where does that place it? If a system can assist in generating new knowledge, even indirectly, can it still be considered merely a repository? Or does its role in the process elevate it to something more? The answer is not straightforward. Because the term intelligence carries assumptions that may not fully apply to artificial systems. It implies awareness, intention, and comprehension, qualities that AI does not possess. But at the same time, reducing AI to a simple library ignores the complexity of its operations and the impact of its capabilities. Perhaps the issue is not whether AI is intelligent in the traditional sense, but whether the framework used to evaluate intelligence is sufficient for what AI represents. There is a concept that only a small number of researchers discuss openly, often referred to as emergent behavior. It describes situations where a system exhibits capabilities that were not explicitly programmed or anticipated, arising from the interaction of simpler components. In large-scale AI models, emergent behavior has been observed in the form of unexpected problem-solving abilities, language understanding, and even rudimentary forms of reasoning. These behaviors are not directly taught. They emerge, and emergence complicates the narrative, because it suggests that intelligence, or something resembling it, can arise from processes that do not mirror human cognition. It suggests that intelligence may not be a singular, well-defined property, but a spectrum of capabilities that can manifest in different forms. This idea challenges a deeply rooted assumption: that intelligence must look like us, that it must think like us, that it must understand in the way we do. But what if it doesn't? What if intelligence, in its broader sense, is not confined to human experience? This is where the emotional dimension of the question begins to surface. Because the debate about AI is not just technical. It is personal. It touches on identity, on value, on the role of humans in a world where machines are becoming increasingly capable. If AI is just a tool, then it remains under control. It remains predictable. It remains within the boundaries that humans define. But if AI begins to exhibit behaviors that resemble intelligence, even without consciousness, those boundaries become less clear. There was a moment reported by a teacher who experimented with AI in the classroom. She asked her students to write essays on a complex topic, then used an AI system to generate a comparison. The results were unsettling. The AI-produced essay was not only coherent but structured in a way that demonstrated a level of clarity and organization that surpassed most of the student submissions. It did not copy existing work. It synthesized information into a form that appeared thoughtful, even persuasive. The students reacted in different ways. Some were impressed, others were uncomfortable, but one response stood out. A student asked, "If it can do this, what are we supposed to do?" That question reveals something deeper than curiosity. It reveals uncertainty, because the presence of AI forces a reconsideration of roles. Not just in work, but in thought, in creativity, in problem solving. And yet, despite these capabilities, AI remains fundamentally different from human intelligence. It does not possess intention. It does not set its own goals. It does not seek meaning or purpose. Its outputs are driven by input, shaped by training, and constrained by design. This duality, capable yet limited, is what makes the question so difficult to answer. Is AI really intelligent? Or is it just a smart library? Perhaps it is neither. Perhaps it is something that exists between categories, a system that challenges definitions rather than fitting neatly within them. Because when you look closely, the distinction between retrieval and reasoning is not binary. It is a continuum, and AI operates somewhere along that continuum, closer to one end in some cases, closer to the other in others. The real question, then, is not whether AI is intelligent in the way humans are, but whether it is capable of performing functions that, until recently, were considered exclusive to intelligence. And the answer to that question is becoming increasingly difficult to deny. There is one final detail that is rarely discussed, yet it may be the most important of all. Intelligence, as humans understand it, is not just about capability. It is about context. It is about how those capabilities are applied, interpreted, and integrated into a broader system. AI does not exist in isolation. It exists within a human framework. Its outputs influence decisions. Its recommendations shape actions. Its presence alters behavior. And in doing so, it becomes part of a larger intelligence system, one that includes both humans and machines. This hybrid system is where the future is unfolding. Not in a world where AI replaces human intelligence, but in a world where the definition of intelligence itself is expanding. And once that expansion begins, the original question starts to lose its simplicity. Because the line between a smart library and an intelligent system is no longer clear. It shifts, it evolves, it adapts, just like the technology itself. So the next time you see an answer generated in seconds, a solution formed without hesitation, or an idea presented in a way that feels unexpectedly insightful, pause for a moment. Not to decide whether it is intelligent, but to recognize that the question itself may no longer have a simple answer. And that the reality you are observing is not just a tool retrieving information, but a system participating in something far more complex. Something that is still unfolding. Something that is still being understood. And something that, whether we fully realize it or not, is already changing the way intelligence is defined.